I've been wanting to make more videos on my channel, especially videos focusing on movies, but then my PC went kaput. I've had a new one for a couple of months now, but the procrastination was hitting hard. I was still on the early planning stages of what these videos would be like. The main and easiest idea I had was just to talk about the newest movies I saw in theaters. I was going to do a video on 2 movies, but then the procrastination hit, then 2 movies became 3, 3 became 4, and now I'm at 5. I know if I don't make something now, I'm going to think it's not worth making anymore. It still could be, but at least this way I could scratch that YouTube channel video making itch that I've had for almost a year. With that short excuse/intro out of the way, here are the last 5 movies I saw in theaters. These are all new releases. At least to general audiences, I'm not an expert in reviewing movies. These are more just my thoughts on what I saw. The Backrooms. I was born in '96. I just turned 30 this year. I'm what the kids would call an unk. So I didn't really grow up with these analog horror stories the same way that some of the Backroom fans did. The closest things were these creepypasta stories, but those didn't really kick off until I was almost done with high school. I've had a pretty good idea of what the Backrooms were about. I've seen the Kane Parsons viral video, but I was more intrigued at the behind the scenes stuff of this movie, more than anything else. I mean, a teenager got a movie deal with a major studio, and they've had 2 critically acclaimed actors for the lead. And for the most part, it was good. I liked it well enough. I think my biggest gripes were more with the script. I feel like Clark going crazy was super rushed, and the levels in the Backrooms were a little lackluster. I ended up giving the movie 3.5 stars, but I'm slowly coming around and maybe bumping up the score to 4. I get the feeling the movie is actually way smarter than I initially thought, and definitely more than some people online, and I don't mean that in an offensive, mean-spirited way. I mean that there's layers to it. It's not as straightforward. Especially because, coming out of that movie, the main criticism I heard from people online was that nothing happened. And honestly, that's the most boring kind of critique that anyone can have on anything. This alone, plenty happens. And like I said, I'm not an expert, but from what I can take away from this is that it's an exploration into people holding on to and regretting their past and their trauma. Both characters have a pretty similar kind of issue with that. Clark having regrets with not being an architect and fighting with his wife and, getting kicked out of his own house. And then the therapist character, her issues with her mom there. And the way the characters react to the Backrooms is pretty much how they deal with their own trauma. And besides that, the Backrooms, the concept of it, at least to me, it felt like a really good metaphor for generative AI. Clark in the trailer and in the movie, the way he explains it.
And the more times it remembers something, the less it does.
Feed enough information into AI, and it pulls more and more and more from all of these, and eventually it just gets kind of distorted. And that company with the hazmat guys, it also feels like it was a metaphor for a lot of companies in real life trying to find out how to exploit something like that, even though it still does plenty of harm to people. Given what Kane Parsons has said about using AI in his future project, it feels really intentional, which makes the latest A24 news pretty disappointing. In short, it was good. I really liked it. And honestly, I really hope it gets a sequel. I feel like The Backrooms 2 is gonna blow this one out of the water, and I might have to rewatch this one, and maybe even that extended version that just got announced a little while ago while I was making this. Obsession. I did not recognize Curry Barker's name. It was attached to every poster and trailer leading up to the release date, and it wasn't until I saw a clip of the premiere that I remembered who he was.
No, dude, you don't need. No, girlfriend.
I wasn't exactly following what people were saying online before this movie came out, but I can imagine more or less what they were saying. Isn't that funny TikTok guy? How is he gonna make anything scary? And it probably wasn't that bad. I feel like we've had enough people that come from comedy go ahead and make very, very successful horror movies. Whether they did comedy stuff online or otherwise. And I didn't really get to see this movie until about a week after it came out. Everybody that was talking about it, they were hyping it up like crazy. And my expectations were met. I mean, it was very unsettling. I jumped out of my seat a few times, and the ending left me feeling empty. It's a very depressing ending, and it doesn't really take much to process all of it. It's a pretty straightforward movie. And on such a small budget too, I mean, it's breaking records like crazy. Indy Navarrete is getting a ton of praise, and it was well earned. When people were hyping up this movie leading up to me watching it, that's what people would talk about the most. And I don't know if it was because they were aroused or because they felt bad for her character, but she killed it. And Michael Johnston's, the guy that plays Bear, I mean, his character gets a lot of hate online, but a character like that doesn't get that kind of hate without a great performance. I mean, he reminded me a lot of Mordecai from Regular Show, but way worse. The lighting in this movie, also phenomenal. It really does a lot for a lot of these scenes, even for the scenes that weren't scary. The music was also ethereal. The Love Is in the Air track, I think that's the standout. I've listened to that a few times already. It's great. I ended up giving this movie a 4.5 out of 5. Just short of perfect. I think the world building stuff around how the Willows work kind of got my head scratching a little bit. But what I would consider an actual critique is more the audio mixing. I just kind of wish they would stop playing music so loudly in some moments that I think would probably benefit from things being a bit more quiet. Sometimes it was kind of hard to hear what the characters were saying. And I don't know if that's just me, but it dragged it down a little bit. Disclosure Day. Steven My Goat Spielberg. Indiana Jones, Jaws, Catch Me If You Can, The Terminal, West Side Story, The Fablemans, The Adventures of Tintin, E.T., motherfucking Jurassic Park. He's made so many bangers. And even when they aren't great, parts of them are still pretty enjoyable. When he announced that this movie was going to be the third movie in his Alien trilogy, I was hyped. But I think I might have been too hyped. Don't get me wrong, there's still the Spielberg charm, but I think he could not have picked a worse time to release something like this. I also didn't really vibe with the message about corporate media being the most trustworthy source of information. I mean, seeing how that's going nowadays, it's kind of, you know, a little dated. And the CGI was also kind of wonky. I have no idea what happened there. I mean, not that he's in charge of special effects, but, you know, he kind of changed the game. He helped change the game for that. It wasn't exactly bad though. Colin Firth and Coleman Domingo were great as always. I love the speech Domingo's character gave about empathy being the next step in evolution. It's a really great message, and I mean, if you know a bit about anthropology and all that, he's not too far off. The two that really stood out to me though were of course Emily Blunt. The way she would snap between languages and how she was kind of confused but mostly rolled with all the weird stuff happening. That was really good. The scene around the beginning when she's first introduced in the newsroom where it was all in one take, that was amazing. I mean, West Side Story had a similar scene at a gymnasium, but this one, I mean, she's speaking like 3 different languages. She's kind of freaking people out, and it's not just her, it's everybody else, but she was the main focus there. And it didn't just show her acting skills, it also showed Spielberg's, you know, directing and blocking skills and all that. And then, of course, you know, Kaminsky's cinematography, it's great as always. The other actor, though, that stood out to me was Courtney Grace. She's the news anchor lady who was only in the last 6 minutes of this movie. But she actually had me emotionally invested in the clips that they were showing off. I kind of laughed a little bit, especially in the first one, where they were holding up the umbrellas for the little alien guys. But seeing her reactions to this kind of made me suspend my disbelief a little bit. Like, I could really buy that everyone in the world would kind of just stop what they were doing and just kind of, you know, empathize with these creatures that don't even look human and all that. Which kind of makes the last line in the movie hit that much harder, which was listen. And I heard a lot of complaints about it because people say that it ends just as they're about to show everything. I mean, to me at least, it doesn't feel like the footage is the whole point. Like I said, it's all about empathy, and her saying listen in universe is her beginning to disclose everything. But to us, it's a command, you know, like more of a point of advice to kind of just listen to everybody and their differences and all that hippy dippy shit. Which I make fun of it, but it's not a bad message. I know Spielberg can still make really good movies. Not too long ago, he made 2 of them. This one, like I said, not bad. I think the issue is more with the writing. There's some really questionable lines of dialogue and certain moments that really made me wonder what they were thinking. I think if some of the stuff wasn't too silly, people might have liked it more. And I am a bit biased. I'm not gonna lie. I ended up giving it a 4. I can kind of see how this is a 3 or a 3.5 for some people, especially the people I saw this with, but he's my GOAT. I gave it a 4. Toy Story 5. I know I'm in the majority when I say that the Toy Story series should have stopped after 3. I grew up with the movies, and when Andy was going to college, I was about to go to college, just like probably the other people that were watching it that also grew up with these movies was doing. It was the perfect send-off, and it's still the best one in my opinion. 4 was not as good, but it wasn't bad by any means. It just felt really unnecessary. So while I was looking forward to this one, I was prepared to be disappointed. I'm happy to say I enjoyed it more than the last one. Jessie's the main hero now, and they finish off her story from the second movie. They also give Bonnie a lot more of an arc here instead of just being a background kid. Not even Andy got something like that. The closest was in the third movie. I think they wanted to make her more sympathetic since a lot of people were hating on her for forgetting about Woody in the last one, which I always thought was kind of weird to be beefing with a kid, especially a cartoon child. I mean, she's barely 6, but you know, still. I do think it was a good call though. From what I've seen on the reviews and the memes, I think a lot of people are kind of coming around to her character. One of the main points of this movie is technology and how it affects children, and also how they interact with each other. And I hope a lot of parents of iPad kids learn from it. I hate to sound like a boomer, but it's true. I kind of grew up before all that, where we had to use our imagination. And this movie makes a very good point about it. You know, not only does it fuel the way you process information, it also helps how you interact with people. When your only interaction with people is behind a screen, it's 100% not as personal as face-to-face, and it kind of dehumanizes people in a way. Like, I feel like that's why a lot of people nowadays kind of get away with saying some pretty heinous shit to each other, and it's a good message. The animation as always is gorgeous. It's every Pixar movie, but I really love the art style when we were in the kids' imaginations. There's also a subplot with a gang of Buzz Lightyears, and it has one of the most cathartic scenes in my adult life. I didn't think I would need a scene like that. My inner child was happy when they played the first few notes from Jessie's song in Toy Story 2. I had the same exact feeling when she opened the lunchbox. This movie is a bit more recent, so I'm not gonna spoil it as much as the other two, but if you've seen it, you know exactly what I'm talking about. My biggest complaint though is that the side characters don't come out as much as they should. I understand some of them have unfortunately passed away in the last few years, but they're already recast. Just have them join in on the adventure, especially Slink. He was always my favorite side character, and I'm just a little bummed that him and Mr. Potato Head, they don't really get any, I mean, him and Mr. Potato Head don't get lines, but even Rex and Ham, I mean, their actors are still alive and they get sidelined real bad. I gave it a 4.5 out of 5. I still think it's really good. I think it's maybe not way better, but it's definitely better than 4. And I feel like this is a good way to end it too. Maybe even end Bonnie's story. But I know as long as these keep making money, they'll keep making these movies. You know, to infinity and beyond and all that. Boo! Supergirl. Supergirl Woman of Tomorrow is an 8-issue miniseries by writer Tom King and artist Bilky Evely. I've read it. To really oversimplify it, it's basically True Grit in space, and it has some of the most breathtaking panels. Beside the writing being great, the art is what most people remember. It's definitely what I remember most after I read it. So when James Gunn and DC Studios announced that the Supergirl movie would be basing its story on that comic, I was beyond excited. Superman last year was a big hit, and I love that movie too. I mean, it had a lot going for it. I mean, every DC project, starting from Creature Commandos, was a huge hit. I was unfortunately disappointed. And I hate that this movie was not as good as I was hoping for it to be, because there are some people online already hoping for it to fail. And it's never really a good look when you want something to fail, but their reasons are just bad. You know, there's no other way to put it. It's some dumb culture war thing that they think they need to argue, and it does get clicks, and I do kind of want to just get it out of the way. The actors were definitely not the problem. I am never going to agree with any of that shit that they try to grift on people. I'm never going to be making stuff like that. My problems with this movie are more coming from the fact that it's a poor adaptation of a great comic. The backbone of the story is really the only thing they kept. Kara's moral lesson, it kind of loses all meaning by the end of this story. The music was also such a huge letdown. I still listen to the Superman soundtrack sometimes. Last Sun still gives me goosebumps, and it actually kind of lifts my spirits whenever I hear it in the morning. There was nothing memorable like that in this movie. The needle drops, the licensed music also weren't great. I don't know why they had Blondie in all the trailers if they weren't even going to have any of their music in it. And I don't hate any of the songs, they were just really dull. And I know that that one particular song near the end was bad, and I agree it was the worst one. Maybe if it wasn't a cover, I might have liked it a bit more, but it is honestly not the end of the world. But like I said about the comic before, it having some really breathtaking art, my biggest issue with this movie is just that it's so dull looking. And it doesn't even start that way. It was actually giving me Star Wars Guardians of the Galaxy vibes in the beginning, with how some of the aliens and the planets look like and a bit of the humor. After they leave that bus station though, it's just gray and brown dust planets after that. And they even name one of the planets after the artist from the comic. And I'm gonna be showing footage of the trailers in the background while I'm talking about all these movies. I'm also gonna throw in some of the panels from the comic I'm talking about. Tell me these would not have been better. Even if they don't get them 1-to-1 exactly right, it would have made the movie so much more memorable, and honestly it would have really helped it. That's probably its biggest offense in my opinion. Now, for as much as I am ripping on it, I did not hate it. If we're talking about most atrocious comic story adaptations, there are worse. This just felt so run-of-the-mill. It reminded me of the early MCU movies. You know, nothing great, but nothing that screams that they should stop, at least not creative wise. My concerns, and probably a lot of other people's concerns, are that this is just a mediocre movie, and nowadays superhero movies can't really get away with just mid. They need to be really successful, they need to make a lot of money, and you can't do that if your movies aren't up to par. And if a superhero movie isn't making close to Avengers box office numbers, these dumbass executives, they're just gonna pull the plug. I love DC, I love DC Comics, I think maybe more than Marvel, and I don't want this cinematic universe to fail, especially since it just started. Like I said though, the actors were not the issue. Millie Alcock was great as Kara, and even though I did not agree with the way her story ended, I still feel like it's going to open up the door for some really interesting conflict with Superman. Not just that, you know, the conflict between them, I think also just the way superheroes work in that universe. You know, Superman feels like a standout because he doesn't just kill willy-nilly, and neither does Supergirl, but she's willing to do it. I'm getting sidetracked though. This was the most recent movie I saw, so I have a lot more to say about it. It's more fresh in my mind. Now, while I think it's average as a superhero movie, it does have its upsides, and like I said, it's mostly coming from its cast, and not even its main cast. It's good to see Superman come back for this. He's not in it as much, but he adds a lot. Also, the two people that play Supergirl's parents in those Krypton flashbacks were really good. The girl that plays Ruthie, also really good. The two people I feel didn't work for me was Jason Momoa as Lobo. He fits Lobo more than Aquaman. I just wasn't a huge fan of how much he showed up. I think maybe a cameo would have been fine. And then of course Krem. He's not particularly memorable in the comic. I think that's his whole thing. That's the only series he really comes out outside of maybe like a little cameo in the background without any lines. Besides his performance not being great, he's just really over designed in this. I don't know what they were thinking. So I ended up giving this movie a 3 out of 5. Like I said, it's not offensively bad. It's not the worst superhero comic adaptation ever, but it could have been way better. And there we have it, the last 5 movies I saw in theaters and how I felt about them. But you guys let me know if you watched any of these, if you agree with me, disagree with me, what are the movies you're looking forward to watching in the future. I'm hoping to make more stuff like this, hopefully before there's too many to cover, just like now. If you have any suggestions for any other movies or topics you'd want me to talk about, let me know. I'm always open to making more videos. Like I said, I've been having an itch to make more content, and I'm always willing to make more stuff, whether it's video games, movies, anything like that. Thank you for watching.